Welcome to our Emerson Group Wealth Call for January 2024. I'm excited today to be talking about how to analyze your rental property performance. And in today's call, we're really going to understand the key considerations of how to analyze your rental property, what we're going to be looking at as far as the metrics go, your position as far as your goals, what you expect from your money and how hard it's going to work for you. Right, before we get into more of the conversation, just a quick little blurb on who I am. Well, my name is Nick Emerson, and I specialize in representing investor owners with an emphasis in 1031 exchange and tax-deferred reinvestment options. Now, I'm also an active investor in buying long-term holds, predominantly out of state, and I also participate in fix and flip, and will be pursuing development with ADU construction later this year. I also own and operate Leisure Life Property Management, where we have two full-time property managers to help our clients out with a service they're not getting from other property managers. And I've represented over 100 plus 1031 exchange transactions successfully, I should add. Lastly, I'm a husband and a rad dad of 3 kids, my beautiful daughters Blake and Frankie, and my new son Lincoln. So getting into the call topic here, what will we be talking about? Well, the key considerations when we're evaluating the rental property. We're going to dive into just a quick refresher on what are our operating income and operating expenses. We're going to go through some financial calculations so that we can really understand what calculations do we use, why do we use them, and when do we use them. We're going to go through the asset performance test, right? This is the worksheet that's going to help us understand what do we have, what's our net operating income, and what is our money generating for us in the form of returns. We'll briefly touch on some of the common pitfalls as an investor, and then we'll just talk about, hey, what's the ready, set, and action steps to make a decision and understand that maybe the decision is to do nothing. Yet, oftentimes, if you held property for any length of time, over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, typically that's an opportunity, right, to take a look, take a dive, see what your actual performance is, see what your equity is, and really understand, if I get out of this position, is there an opportunity for improvement? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, and yet most times there are. So let's go more into what that looks like. All right, some base ground rules here for some of the terms that we're going to go over and kind of not necessarily definitions per se, but also how they play into bigger picture considerations. So net operating income, right? How much am I earning after all operating expenses are paid? This includes your mortgage. Net equity, I'm going to be referring to equity and net equity as synonymous, right? They're going to mean the same thing. So net equity meaning the current value of your property, less commission and closing costs, and minus any debt or mortgage that you might be holding on the property, right? Your net amount that you have available if you were to sell the property and conduct a tax-deferred reinvestment. Depreciation. What is your current depreciation schedule? Do you know how much you have left on it? Are you clear on how much you're writing off each year? And what is your current adjusted basis, right? This is the factor that will determine how much net gain you would have on a property if you were to sell it as an investment property. Lastly, condition. What repairs or improvements are needed now or in the next 5 years, right? How much capital will I need? And how does this impact my returns and financial positions, right? Understand that if you're running a property and everything's been going great for 10 years, 15 years, you're likely going to have things coming up as far as kitchen improvements, bathroom upgrades, flooring, windows, roofing, landscaping, right? All those things come at a cost to your bottom line for your investment. Moving on from key considerations, we're going to just ask ourselves some questions right now, right? So that we can kind of get ourselves in the open mindset of just challenging ourselves to be accountable to where we're at and just what are we trying to accomplish, right? You're always going to do well if you buy a rental property and hold long term. Right? There's not going to be a problem there. You're going to build wealth. That's what we appreciate about this process. And yet, understand that what you bought a long time ago might not currently be supporting what your now goals are, right? So what phase of investing are you in? Are you in the active phase or are you in the passive phase, right? Do you want to be dealing with your tenants, toilets, and trash, or do you want to be collecting a check at the end of each month? Each person's going to be in a different phase in their investing career, and because of that, have different wants and needs. What was your goal in owning rental property, right? Take yourself back to when you first bought your first property. And maybe it wasn't even a rental, right? It was your primary that became the rental. But what was the goal? What's most important about your asset's performance right now, right? How do you need your money to work for you to support you and your family for now and for longer term? Do you rely on your rental income to fund your living expenses, to fund your lifestyle? Or is it just icing on the cake? Right? We're really getting clear on what's important about what we need from our property, but from the way our capital will work for us. Is there an opportunity to improve your financial position? And if there is, are you prepared to take action? It's okay if the answer is no, right? We're just trying to get clear on where are we at in the process and what are we willing to do about it, provided the information suggests we do something. What is the pain or problem you're seeking to solve, right? Are you tired of dealing with problems after hours, dealing with accounting? Do you not want to understand what each month your tenants are owed and what's wrong with their toilet? Or are you happy with those things, right? Some people enjoy that stuff. Keeps them active, it keeps them involved, and that's awesome, right? We support all those positions. Really what we're trying to uncover today is where are we at, right? Take humble out of our pocket and be clear on kind of what we're trying to do here now and in the longer term. All right, operating income, right? Just a quick reminder of outside of your gross rents, is there other places or opportunities for income as far as having on-site laundry? Maybe you're decoupling the garage or street parking, or rather driveway parking, or pet rent, right? What type of pet rent are you charging in addition to the gross rent? Utility credits, right? Maybe you have one water meter with 4 units. So maybe you are incurring all that, or maybe you are decoupling that and requesting a flat fee or a portion be split between tenants. All of those things are going to go into our gross rent, our operating income bucket. Okay, operating expenses, the costs and recurring costs of operating and maintaining your investment property, right? So this is a good refresher of all the things that would be under this category. Repairs and maintenance. Maybe you have a reserve account that you're putting aside that you know, hey, I'm going to have a roof coming up, or I know I'm going to have a larger cast iron plumbing replacement. So that could also be included in it, right? Maybe you're tucking away 5% off of your income from the rental, knowing you're going to take care of that down the road. Property taxes, insurance, management fees and tenant placement. HOAs, Melrose, or special assessments, right? These are all things that need to go under these categories. Landscaping maintenance, pest control, home warranty, and also your principal and interest. So this is the asset performance test, and we're going to be going through a section of it at a time, and then the full picture here with an example, so we can really anchor this entire process from top to bottom, which is really going through your property's pro forma, right? Where are we at with the income? Where are we at with the expenses? And what are we really netting, walking away with? So in the expense category, on the right side, really it's a cheat sheet, right? If you don't have an answer for yourself, you can use the right-hand side to create some estimates. Know that property tax is something I could certainly get to you as far as the upcoming year. And the repairs and maintenance. So typically what I do I'm looking at a property is I'm going to assume roughly $150 to $200 per door as far as repairs and maintenance go. Now you can throttle that up or down between $100 to $300 per door. Just depends on the condition of the property. right? No matter what condition, I'm going to assume a minimum of $100 per month for repairs and maintenance. Property management fee can range anywhere from 5 to 10%. So it really depends on your position. And then HOA and other fees, right? Is there any other type of recurring fees that you're dealing with as far as water, trash, sewer, any other supplemental fees or assessments that are coming up, or anything else that really is taking away from your profit? Okay, we have the asset performance test, right, from top to bottom here. So really, this is a great example of how I'm able to help clients understand where they're at, what they have, and then from this information, really chunking it down and understanding what the metrics and the financial information is telling us, right? So as we can see, we went over the income at the top, the expenses here in the middle, and then we end up here at the bottom for our total income, our total expenses, what our net operating income is, right? So income less expenses, multiply that times 12 so we can generate our annual operating income. And then we're going to figure out what our cash on cash return is, right? Before getting into that, let's go through what some of these financial calculations look like. Understanding financial calculations. So we have a total of 5 different financial calculations that we're looking at here. And I want you to understand the difference between them, right? Because the manner in which you'll use them will vary depending on what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to analyze. The first one is going to be one of the most common things, the cap rate, the capitalization rate, which is your net operating income divided by the fair market value. Now, this is a helpful metric to really understand a base, right, general sense of the performance of the property. Yet, this is not something that's going to give you a very comprehensive understanding of what you have. An example of the way I would use a cap rate is I would use a cap rate to help identify opportunities for purchase. What I mean by that is if I had, let's say, 40 active 2 to 4 unit properties here in the San Diego market, I would use the cap rate, right, to generate a quick ballpark of top to bottom, right, lowest to highest with cap rate performance. Then I would only the cherry pick the top section to then go deeper into for more financial analysis. So really, I'm just using the cap rate as a filtering tool. One thing I want to point out too about that is the capitalization rate, because you're dividing by a fair market value, you're not taking into consideration the debt or the equity position, right? So again, it's a very general return on equity. Now, this is way more comprehensive to understand the performance of your money and your equity, right? How's it working for you? So we have the net operating income, any appreciation for that year, and the principal buy down. So one thing I want to point out is, well, how am I going to know what appreciation or buy down? Yeah, you're not at the beginning of the year. So understand the return on equity is looking back, right? We're going to use return on equity to understand what the performance was over the past 12 months, right? How much did the market go up? How much did I buy down in principal? And what was my net operating income? This is giving us a really good snapshot of what our equity is doing for us, right? How our capital is working for us. Now, return on investment. The difference between this and equity, right, is that we're focusing on the now, which is the equity, versus the past, which was your initial investment plus any improvements. So for the return on investment, what we're focusing on is how hard is your initial investment, whether it's your down payment or if you paid all cash, that's your purchase price, plus any improvements that you've done on the property, right? So we're really trying to understand what did our investment do for us and how hard is it working for us each year? Now, for a return on investment, this is not something that's going to be very insightful for you if you're 20 years into the property, right? Safe to say your initial investment is going to look pretty good. And the numbers are typically going to look double digits, right? Because you have a lower initial investment relative to what the prices are today. So understand return on investment would make sense to understand a purchase opportunity, yet not as insightful when you're looking back over a long ownership period. Next, we have the cash on cash. right? What is our cash doing for us? So really what we're trying to understand is from the net operating income divided by our initial down payment and improvements, what's our cash doing to work for us, right? The difference between the cash on cash and the return on investment is that we're not factoring in any appreciation. We're not factoring in any principal buy down. We're just focused on the net operating income and how strong that income is relative to our initial investment. Now, the current cash on cash is the number one metric that I use to help understand and provide insights on what our current investment position is. So our current cash on cash is going to be our net operating income divided by our equity or net equity. So in other words, how much net income did we generate? And then what is the value of our property minus commission and closing costs and any mortgage to get to our net equity. So really what we're looking at is a real-time snapshot of what do I have right now, how much capital do I have, and how much return is that capital generating, right? I use current cash on cash because this gives us a snapshot of today. And that's what we want to know. What do I have today? I don't want to know how well I bought something 20 years ago, right? I also don't want to use return on equity because one year it could appreciate 7%, another year it could appreciate 1%. So there's going to be fluctuations on your ROE. So current cash on cash, right? This is what we're focusing on. This is the number that's really going to give us clarity of what we have and what might be our opportunity. So to really drill this down, we're going to go through an example of a client I just helped out last week. In this example, we'll say they're Billy and Susie. They own 123 Main Street here in San Diego. Property is worth $1.265 million, and the current gross rents are $3,650. So first and foremost, Bill and Susie bought this property in 2004 for a total of $580,000. This property is a duplex, and the current gross rents are at least 40% under market value. So there is an opportunity to increase rent roll on this. However, because of the tenant protections, they can only increase 10% per year. So if someone would like to do the math, you can certainly get back with us on it. And yet we know it's going to take many, many years to catch up to market in excess of 10. So looking at that option, probably not the most ideal. Next, we're going to look at repairs and maintenance. In this case, because there's two doors, I put $200 for each door. We have a really low tax basis, right? $400 a month. That's awesome. And our insurance is also very low relative to what it would be if we were to buy this asset today with the cost of insurance. Note that they're self-managing the property. There's no other associated fees for HOA or any other recurring fees outside of that. So a really low operating expenses. And so when you look at this, you first think of, wow, this place has got to be generating some really good cash flow. And yet that's exactly what I want to point out to you is when we look at the total income here, minus expenses, our net operating income is $2,770 a month. Hey, if someone told me I was making that per month on my rental, I'd be very excited. Yet the difference is we're making that on a net value of an asset worth $1.265 million. So when we get our net operating income here at the bottom, which is $2,770 times 12, we have $33,240 in net operating income. That comes out to a cash on cash return, which I call a current cash on cash return of 2.82%. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to make sure my money's generating above inflation, right? So in this case, there's an opportunity here, a tremendous opportunity. So let's go through some of the math on this. Total income, total expenses. There we go. Recap of our net operating income. Then we're going to go through the current cash on cash calculation. Now, this is what I call current cash on cash, right? There's many definitions of what cash on cash might be. And yet this is what I use to really understand what we have and where we might go. Looking at the math here, as you can see, 1.265 times 93%. So 7% we're factoring in, which is conservative, right? I'm always going to be a little bit higher on my estimates for expenses. And therefore, after that, we're going to be at a total of $1,176,450, right? That is our net equity, or the net proceeds we'd realize if we were to sell this property and reinvest using a 1031 exchange. What I mean by that is you're not going to pay state taxes. You're not going to pay federal taxes. You're not going to pay 25% depreciation recapture, right? You're going to defer all those things. So all this money is getting rolled into another opportunity or another investment. As you can see, going through the math again, $33,240 divided by the net equity, 2.82% current cash on cash. Awesome. We know what we have, right? We have financial clarity of how hard our capital is working for us. That's exactly what we want. Now let's go through the financial calculations that we went through as far as the top 5 here, right? And what does it look like using the information here? As you can see, well, the capitalization rate, 2.63%. Well, that's poor, right? That's not something that you'd want to own if you can go buy something else and generate a higher return today in our market. Return on equity. So what you'll notice here is we've got the net operating income, but then we've got the appreciation, right? It went up 7%. Because of that appreciation at our price points, right, which is part of the reason people choose to invest here, they generated $82,000 in appreciation. So when you're looking at that total, that's a return on equity of 9.79%. Pretty good. And yet, if they had principal buy down, right, if they had higher net operating income, we would be in a different category as far as that return on equity. Next, we're going to look at return on investment, right? How well did we buy the asset? Well, we've owned it for 20 years. So I'm going to assume we did pretty well. Looking at the numbers would suggest the same, right? We bought it for $580,000. So if you look at our return on investment, we have our net operating income plus our appreciation plus our debt buy down divided by the initial purchase price of $580,000. Also, that was purchase cash, so that's why the full purchase price is used for that rather than a down payment. Cash on cash, right? What's our net operating income and how's it working for us relative to our current down payment plus improvements? Thank you, ambulance. Good luck to you. As our total, 19.87%, right? Near 20%. That's awesome, right? We did good buying an asset and holding onto it for 20 years, and we got rewarded by having a tremendous return on our initial investment. Cash on cash, we're looking at our net operating income divided by our initial down payment, which is our purchase price, and we're looking at a total of 5.73%. Now to wrap out here at the bottom, our current cash on cash, right? We're looking at 2.82%. So looking at these numbers, you might have your own perspective of whether these are good, bad, great, or just average. And yet it's just important to understand where are we at, right? This is kind of our vital signs here. Where are we at? What are we doing? And how is our money performing? As we can see, we did great buying it, but outside of that category, these are all positions we could replace in our market today by buying another property. So it doesn't mean you go buy another property, of course, but what it means is that I could easily improve this position if my cash flow, right, and how much I earn each month was critical or important to my lifestyle, to my family, or for my legacy to my kids. So asset performance test ahas, right? What do we take away from the information that we learned from looking at this property with our cash on cash, our return on investment, what the current return on equity is, what's our cap rate, right? What did we really take away? Well, one thing is we got clear, and clarity is power, right? Because we were able to create meaningful information and financial metrics so that we can understand what we have. and we can understand what the opportunity is. Until you have clarity, action cannot be taken, decisions cannot be made, understanding cannot be met. So we need to first recognize we need clarity in order to have power to make informed decisions. The next thing is the past versus the present, right? Why did I buy this property when I first bought it? And why do I currently own the property? Are they in alignment with each other? Oftentimes they're not. Right? What you need when you're 30 versus what you need when you're 60 versus what you need when you're 80 are all different needs amongst the seasons of life. So understand what your needs may have been in the past, but also be clear on what are your current needs and how does your property or your money need to perform in the future to support your desired retirement needs, lifestyle, and legacy planning. Common language. The one thing I want to point out here that's so important is when you have a current cash on cash figure, right? We now have a language that we can speak to understand what we have and we can compare to other opportunities, right? If I know net what my money is earning for me, then whether it's a brick and mortar for reinvestment, or if I'm looking at another detached or a multifamily or commercial, or maybe I'm looking at something more passive, right? Like a DST fund or a private fund for development, or multitude of other options, right? This helps us understand if I have this, and this is what I'm currently yielding off my money, what do other opportunities look like if I were to place my position in those, right? Do I increase my position? Do I stay the same? Do I generate a lot more wealth over the long term? These are all things that I trust you'd want to know. And maybe the answer is you do nothing, right? We're not saying this means you have to do something because you did a test on your property. And yet it's just being aware of what you have and really understanding if there's an opportunity to make more money, it didn't require, right, more active effort from you to make that money other than the effort to create the reinvestment process. What will you do with it? Last thing, what is your opportunity, right? Do you know what your opportunity is? Are you clear on what you can invest in today and what return you might expect from it? Do you know what it looked like to repackage your money and rebuy something here in your own market in San Diego? Or what it would look like to sell this and buy out of state? There's a tremendous amount of opportunities in today's market, and borders are no longer a restriction, right? It's a national investment opportunity. So understand, looking at all these things, I trust that you're able to get a more clear picture of where you're at and what you have. And if you're not, just call me. I can help you accomplish that in going through this information. All right, I want to also just cover the most common pitfalls of the way we might think or not think. So one of the ones being not budgeting for repairs or larger capital improvement needs, right? And one of the examples I have for this is, if my client, who we did help sell her dilapidated rental, if she had not, she would have been looking at spending over $75,000 in repairs, right? We needed everything: new kitchen, new bathrooms, new flooring, windows, roofing. By the time we were done with it, we'd be in excess of $100,000. Or in other words, it would have taken 3.5 years for her to get her money back. Instead of doing that, we reinvested into new construction property where she won't have to worry about any capital improvements for the next 10 to 15 years. So understand what your repair needs are, what your capital improvement needs are, and how that will impact your property performance. Next, overvaluing benefits of a low tax basis or not owning a mortgage. One of the examples I want to point out here is when I went through, Billy and Susie's example here on Main Street. They had a really low tax basis and they had no mortgage, right? In a lot of eyes, that's successful, right? That is what you want. And yet what we learned is that even though they had a low tax basis and they had no mortgage, they were still generating a poor performance on their property, right? There's a huge opportunity for them to improve their position. So Just because you've owned a property a long time, or maybe you don't have any debt on it, understand that debt can sometimes actually yield you a higher return on your money and build you more wealth. So be curious, right? Come from curiosity, understand, what do I have? What could it look like if I had some advice from a real estate planner of what my options might be, and take appropriate action. The other thing I want to point out is the cost of doing nothing, right? Some of these things might seem very subtle, right? This property is only making 1% more than mine, or this property is in a location that is maybe not as ideal. And yet, at the same time, if you weren't to do anything, do you know what the cost of that is? I'm going to go ahead and touch base on that in this next slide here for a moment, because it's a profound impact when you might do nothing versus at least knowing what your options are. Lastly, depreciation benefits. Do you know how much depreciation you have on your table still? For some people, it might not matter, right? You're retired, you don't have a high income, and you don't need offsets. And yet for others that are in their income earning years, that matters to your bottom line, right? If you're not offsetting the income from the rental property, you're paying more money in your personal taxes. That's a cost. Understand the holistic impacts, right? Have all these things play into it. Operating income, condition, depreciation, appreciation, right? How are all these things playing into the comprehensive output of the performance and the health of your property? Now, going over the cost of doing nothing, this is a slide I really appreciated from one of our last calls, where we talked about our client who sold their condo here in San Diego and chose to go buy 3 rental investments in Alabama, right? And what I want to convey here is just how dramatic the outcome is after 30 years, right? We look at our annual net cash flow over here on the left-hand side, right? The left-hand side is going to be the San Diego property, and the right-hand side is going to be the Alabama properties. If you look at just year 10, we're 100% plus more operating income on the right side for Alabama, right? And look, they didn't have anything wrong with their condo. It was rented out, it was easy, there were no problems. Yet they chose to look at what they had and what they could do. And because of that, I'm pretty sure their kids are going to thank them. Because 30 years from now, had they chose to do nothing versus doing something, or at least being aware that there is something else out there, the difference in the property value and their net worth is in excess of $1.4 million, right? $1.4 million in difference in property value. And heck, it's even higher than that. It's like 1.6. Additionally, the cash flow. If you look at the cash flow, we're outperforming San Diego by $33,000 a year. So I'm generating $33,000 more a year. I have a net worth of near $1.6 million more, right? And I'm outperforming with the cash on cash. So if you look at the very bottom there, lost operating income, or in other words, the cost of doing nothing, $643,000, $278. Unrealized equity, $1,540,000, right? So just understand that sometimes things might seem subtle or not so significant. Yet when we're talking about owning real estate over the course of long periods of time, it's a huge difference, right? Be clear on where you're at and what you could do. Ready, set, action. So again, just kind of walking us through ourselves. What was the purpose of owning rental property when I first started my journey? Conducting an asset performance test, right? So either you can go through this information and put it together yourself, or you can also reach out, and an asset performance test is something I can help perform for you. And therefore we can go through a strategy session and evaluate whether or not it makes sense to do something. Understand, I tell people to do nothing, right? So it really just depends on where you're at and what the performance is. If it makes sense to keep, then the answer will be keep it. If there's opportunities to reinvest, then we'll look at them. If it means doing nothing, then we'll do nothing. And yet what's most important is you know where you're at, what you have, and what you can do, and then you can decide whether action is important or not. And that comes down to our decision tree, right? What do I have? I'm going to go through my asset performance test. What's my money doing for me? How hard is my capital working for me? Is it what I need or expect of my money? If it is, great. Continue to hold it, reevaluate here in the next year or two. If it's not, let's start talking about what options you might have and start looking at what your capital will look like in different options. And then you can decide if making more money is or isn't something that's a priority for you. Last thing, just take appropriate action. Take any action, right? The fact that you're on this call demonstrates you're taking action, right? There's a reason you're on this call because you want to understand what you have and maybe what your opportunity is. So take action, and I trust from this call, you'll be able to have the information you need to better understand where you're at and where you might go. If not, you know where to find me. Outside of that, want to make sure you guys always know ways in which we can help you out. Feel free to click on the links here or schedule a call or an in-person appointment. Rental property performance test, right? Just a quick sense of where's your property at on a current rent relative to the market. 1031 exchange strategy session, right? Do you want to understand what you have, right? Get an asset performance test, understand what your net proceeds would be, and then start looking at options for how you could replace that money or position it. That's something we can go through and evaluate whether or not it's a strategy to move forward. Direct offer. We do offer direct offers to our clients if it's in the best interest of their bottom line or their needs. If you're looking for a direct offer with no commission, no closing costs, and a flexible closing, that is a process and service we do offer to the right clients. Past and upcoming wealth calls, feel free to check it out. We've got many calls on all different types of wealth topics within the investment space. And lastly, a quick link to our hold worksheet, which is the worksheet that I use to analyze purchase opportunities, right? So as a recap, I use the asset performance test when I'm evaluating my current assets and looking back on what I might have over the past 10, 20 years. And I use the hold worksheet when looking at purchase opportunities. We can go ahead and dive more into that worksheet throughout the course of this year on our next call. And outside of that, I did want to mention, looking ahead to February, I'm excited about this one. We have a call with Chris Dolanowski. With Ruling Group. She's gonna go over some of the new ADU laws in 2024, how that might impact your planning or considerations for ADU construction, what to do with some unpermitted spaces and what your options might be, and then what you're gonna look for if you're out there looking to purchase property for ADU construction. So stay tuned for that. And outside of that, I trust you guys took away some valuable information to help you make informed investment decisions. Have a wealthy rest of your week ahead. Cheers.